They were a thousand hungry pairs of eyes in the frozen twilight, and their howls were the symphony of annihilation. Anya felt the ground tremble beneath her feet as the pack advanced, the cutting air vibrating with the icy promise of death. The smell of death and the warm, fetid breath of the predators mingled with the crunch of snow under countless paws, forming a living storm of teeth and claws. She gripped her husband's spear, a familiar weight in her aged hands, and knew that this night would decide not only the fate of her herd, but whether the last breath of life in her village would finally be extinguished by the icy embrace of 1,000 wolves. And what she would do next would be her last and most desperate dance with death. Anya gripped her husband Boris's spear, feeling the familiar weight and the legacy of a lifetime in her aged hands. 1,000 hungry eyes gleamed in the growing darkness, and the wolves' howls tore through the icy air, making the ground tremble. The grief for Boris's loss was an open wound, but it transformed into silent strength. The life of her small village, its last hope, depended on her. She could not fail. The reindeer, huddled in silent terror, trembled. Anya knew that panic would be fatal. There was no time for weakness or for pain. Her mind, sharp as ice, reviewed the hunting and herding tactics passed down through generations. Every step needed to be precise. Boris's spear, her extension, was a constant reminder of her responsibility and the ancestral wisdom that guided her. With a low, hoarse cry, Anya began to move, flanking the herd. "Come on, my little ones, come on!" Her voice, choked by cold and emotion, carried authority. The reindeer, sensing the urgency, began to move, hesitant at first, then with a firmer cadence, following the woman who, to them, was the personification of safety amidst the impending chaos. The wind, previously an icy breath, howled with greater force, bringing the first flakes of the promised storm. The icy embrace was beginning, and Anya felt it in her bones. The snow, fine and cutting, whipped her face, but she knew it would be her ally. Visibility rapidly decreased, an essential part of her plan. The 1,000 wolves would get lost in the white fury. She guided the reindeer eastward, towards the mountains that rose like sleeping giants. The fissure, a narrow and winding gorge, was the refuge she sought, a natural shelter against the storm and the predators. The path was treacherous, covered by deep snow and slippery rocks, but Anya knew it. Each curve was a crucial piece of her strategy. The wolves, perceiving the movement, intensified the pursuit. Their howls became sharper, closer, mingling with the growing sound of the wind. Anya could feel the warmth of their breath in the air, the wild scent that betrayed their presence, even as the blizzard began to obscure them. She looked back for a brief moment, seeing the shining eyes in the darkness, but did not falter. The climb became steeper, and the reindeer, tired and terrified, struggled to keep pace. Anya felt the fatigue in every muscle, but the image of her village's faces, the hopeful eyes of the children, propelled her. She was the last hope, the fragile link between life and death. The sacrifice of her aged body was a small price for the survival of her people. The mountain fissure was closer, a dark crack in the imposing mass of rock and ice. There, the first part of her plan would materialize. The wolves, blinded by snow and driven by hunger, were about to fall into her trap, forged with ancestral wisdom and the silent fury of a determined woman. The dance with death had only just begun, and Anya was ready to lead it to the end. Anya felt the air change, becoming denser and more humid, a sign that the entrance to the fissure was there, a dark and promising crack in the ice and rock wall. With a final effort, she pushed the reindeer further, Boris's spear serving as an extension of her will, guiding the frightened animals into the narrow mouth of the gorge. The wind, which had previously whipped her face, now howled with amplified force as it was channeled through the passage, transforming the sound into a ghostly lament that echoed through the stones. The blizzard intensified, creating a white whirlwind that swallowed the landscape, and Anya could barely see the reindeer's antlers in front of her, relying only on instinct and memory of the terrain. The wolves, driven by hunger and diminished vision, followed the fresh trail of the reindeer. Their howls, once coordinated, began to fragment, some coming from unexpected directions, others muffled by the wind's fury. The fissure, narrow and treacherous, was not a terrain for such a numerous pack. The slippery rocks, covered by a thin layer of ice, and the fissures hidden by deep snow, made the pursuit a dangerous challenge. Anya, knowing every inch of that place, knew that the terrain would be her greatest ally. She moved with surprising agility for her age, each step calculated, each lean of her body taking advantage of the wind's momentum or the protection of a rock. The reindeer, though exhausted, felt the urgency in Anya's every gesture. They trusted her, a silent and ancestral trust that bound shepherd and flock. The widow used the spear not to attack, but to gently touch the reindeer's flanks, guiding them to safer paths, where the snow was less deep or the ice less treacherous. Her eyes, once tearful with grief, now shone with a cold, calculating determination. The flame of survival lit within her core. Anya's strategy began to unfold. The wind, her invisible accomplice, swept the snow in unpredictable whirlwinds, raising white curtains that blinded the wolves. The pack, accustomed to hunting in open country, was disoriented. Their numbers, once an overwhelming force, now became a hindrance. The stronger wolves pushed the weaker ones, creating a chaos of paws and bodies struggling against the terrain and each other. Howls of frustration and confusion replaced the hunting cries, and Anya could feel the division of the pack, the plan working. She stopped for an instant, her heart pounding in her chest, and looked back. In the white darkness of the blizzard, she glimpsed lupine silhouettes struggling to advance. Some seemed to have gotten lost, their distant howls echoing from other directions, while others clustered at the entrance of the fissure, hesitating before the challenge of the passage. The cold cut her skin, but a wave of heat, the adrenaline of battle, coursed through her veins. She was not fighting with the spear, but with her mind, with the wisdom of her people, with the memory of Boris, and with the love for her village. Anya knew that victory was still far off, but the first part of the trap had been successful. The 1,000 wolves were no longer a united force, but a collection of confused and dispersed predators, fighting against the very environment Anya knew so well. She turned, the spear pointed forward, and continued to guide the reindeer into the depths of the fissure, to the promised refuge. The path was long, and the danger, though diminished, still lurked in every shadow and every gust of wind. But Anya was not alone. The strength of her ancestors and the hope of her people walked with her. Anya advanced deeper into the rocky throat of the fissure, each step a battle against the snow and treacherous ice. The wind howled like a lost soul, echoing off the sheer walls and raising clouds of snow that obscured vision. The reindeer, with wide hooves, struggled to maintain balance, their lean bodies trembling with cold and terror. Exhaustion settled in Anya's bones, a dull ache mixed with grief, but the image of the village's hungry faces was a balm, an inexhaustible source of strength. The fissure was not just a refuge, but an extension of her trap. The rock walls formed a natural corridor that amplified the sound of the wind and created unpredictable air currents. Anya used this to her advantage, guiding the reindeer to a stretch where the wind blew with particular fury, sweeping the snow and the animals sent in confusing directions for the predators. Boris's spear, firm in her hands, was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of her heritage, a tangible link to the wisdom of her husband and ancestral hunters. The wolves' howls, once a terrifying chorus, were fragmented and distant, deceived by the echoes and the dance of the snow. Anya sensed the confusion in the pack. The wolves, accustomed to the open vastness, were disoriented in this labyrinth of ice and rock. She glimpsed yellow eyes gleaming in the gloom, but the silhouette disappeared, swallowed by the curtain of snow. Patience was crucial, and Anya had it in abundance, forged in years of silent waiting under the icy sky. A small group of wolves, the most persistent, managed to approach dangerously. Anya felt the air vibrate with their presence, the wild scent stronger. She stopped the reindeer abruptly, using the spear to form a subtle barrier. With a sharp cry, she struck the spear's tip against the ice, creating a piercing sound that echoed and startled the animals. The reindeer recoiled, and the wolves, surprised, hesitated. It was not an attack, but a diversionary tactic, a game of mind against instinct. Anya took advantage of the pause to guide the reindeer through a narrow and almost invisible passage, a shortcut known only to those who had lived and hunted in those mountains. It was a risk, for the passage was slippery and steep, but it would lead her to a higher ledge, where the wind would be stronger and visibility for the wolves almost nil. The reindeer, with incredible effort, followed her, their hooves scraping on the stones, bodies contorting to pass. Anya felt a twinge in her shoulder, a muscle protesting, but ignored the pain. Upon reaching the ledge, the wind whipped her with renewed force, almost knocking her down. She clung to a protruding rock, her face marked by fatigue and cold, but her eyes shone with unwavering determination. Below, in the main fissure, the wolves pursuing her seemed more confused, their howls turning into frustrated laments. The trap was working, dividing them not only physically, but also in their cohesion as a pack. Hope, once a small glimmer, now burned stronger in Anya's chest. She knew that the night was still long, and that the danger had not passed. The icy embrace of the storm continued, and visibility was minimal. But there on that high ledge, with the reindeer huddled around her, she felt a deep connection with the land, with her ancestors, and with the promise of a new dawn. The strength of her people, the resilience forged in generations of harsh winters, pulsed in her veins. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air burning her lungs, and continued her journey, one step at a time, guiding life away from the clutches of death. The high ledge offered a limited view, swallowed by the white fury of the blizzard. But Anya sensed the strategic advantage. The wind, her relentless ally, swept the snow in torrents, creating an impenetrable veil that concealed her reindeer from the hungry eyes below. Each gust was a burden for her aged body, but also a shield, a breath of hope that propelled her. She nestled against the rock, protecting her face from the cutting wind, and watched the reindeer, who huddled together, seeking warmth and safety in each other and in her. Her brown eyes, marked by years of sun and snow, scanned the invisible horizon, calculating the next move, the safest path to the hidden valley. Exhaustion was a constant weight, but the memory of Boris, the feel of the spear in her hands, was a fire that burned in her chest. He had taught her to read the wind, to feel the changes in the ice, to respect the mountain. Now, she used every lesson. The reindeer, their large, dark eyes reflecting the pale twilight, trusted her blindly. Anya touched the flank of one of them, feeling the faint warmth beneath the thick fur, and whispered words of encouragement, a soft melody that was lost in the wind's howl, but seemed to calm the animals. Below, in the throat of the fissure, the wolves' howls were now a chorus of frustration and disorientation. Anya's natural trap worked with brutal effectiveness. The treacherous terrain, covered by ice and deep snow, and almost zero visibility, transformed the pack of 1,000 predators into a dispersed and confused group. She could imagine the scene. Wolves slipping on the rocks, stumbling over each other, their hunting instincts subdued by the storm's relentless fury. Some howls seemed to come from wrong directions, others were muffled, indicating that the pack was fragmenting, fighting more against the environment than against its prey. Anya knew she could not rest. The danger, though diminished, had not disappeared. Solitary wolves or small groups might try to flank, seeking a less exposed passage. She needed to keep the reindeer moving, guiding them to the safety of the valley. With a deep sigh, she felt the pain in her muscles, but ignored it. Boris's spear, her silent companion, was a reminder that she was not alone. The spirit of her husband and the strength of her ancestors guided her. The next stretch of the path was even more challenging, a steep and winding descent where ice mixed with loose rocks. Anya went ahead, testing each step with the spear's tip, seeking support, feeling the ground's solidity. She made slow, firm gestures to the reindeer, indicating where to step, where to lean. A younger reindeer slipped, letting out a whimper of panic, but Anya supported it with the spear, gently guiding it to a safer crevice. Icy sweat ran down her forehead, but the determination in her eyes was unwavering. At the end of the descent, the wind lessened a little, and the snow, though still dense, seemed less violent. They were approaching the valley. Anya felt a faint relief, a glimmer of hope that warmed her heart. The reindeer, though exhausted, followed her with surprising resilience, their hooves marking the snow in a steady rhythm. The night was still long, but the widow knew that each step was a victory, each obstacle overcome, a tribute to her village and Boris's legacy. The journey continued, guided by courage and the promise of a new dawn, where life, despite everything, would find its way. Anya felt the ground beneath her feet change, the gradual descent giving way to flatter, but no less treacherous terrain. The hidden valley, an ancestral refuge, was closer, but the path was still a tapestry of treacherous ice and deep snow. The wind, though less furious than on the high ledge, still whipped, raising white whirlwinds that obscured vision and bit at exposed skin. She gripped Boris's spear, feeling the cold, familiar wood, a link to the strength that propelled her. The reindeer, exhausted but resilient, followed her closely, their lean bodies forming a compact mass. Their eyes, large and dark, reflected a mix of fear and trust. Anya spoke to them in whispers, ancient words of encouragement, melodies her grandmother had taught her. "Almost there, my little ones, almost there." Each word was a thread of hope, weaving a bridge over the abyss of despair. There was still the danger of the wolves. Although dispersed and confused by the natural trap, some distant howls still tore through the air, reminding her of the constant threat. Anya knew that hunger was a powerful driver, and some predators, the most cunning or desperate, might be trying to flank, seeking an alternative entrance to the valley. She kept her senses sharp, listening to the crunch of ice, the hiss of the wind, each sound a potential clue. Fatigue was a constant presence, a weight on her shoulders, a throbbing ache in her muscles, but Anya could not give in. The life of her village, the future of her people, depended on her endurance. She thought of the children's faces, the wise eyes of the elders, the promise of a new winter, if she succeeded. The grief for Boris was still a wound, but it transformed into an armor of determination, a silent force that propelled her forward. The valley began to open, revealing softer contours, protected by steep slopes that blocked the strongest wind. The snow here was softer, less treacherous, and the air felt a little less biting. The reindeer quickened their pace, sensing the change, the promise of shelter. Anya felt a wave of relief, but did not relax her guard. Caution was a lesson learned in endless winters. Suddenly, a movement in the gloom. A group of 5 wolves, smaller and more agile, emerged from a side crevice, their eyes gleaming with renewed hunger. They had not gotten lost in the main trap, but had found an alternative path. Their howls, now close and menacing, were a brutal reminder that the battle was not over. Anya stopped abruptly, her spear raised. The reindeer huddled behind her, a wall of flesh and fear. She could not fight against 5 hungry wolves alone, not without putting the herd at risk, but she could buy time. With a guttural cry, a sound that came from the depths of her soul, she advanced a step, the spear pointed, a silent challenge. The wolves hesitated, surprised by the ferocity of the small figure. She used the moment to guide the younger reindeer towards a small gorge, a narrow passage that larger wolves could not easily cross. Boris's spear was her extension, a relentless shepherd who pushed the animals to safety. Time was essential. With each second, the distance between the reindeer and the wolves decreased. Anya felt her heart pounding in her chest, cold and fear battling for supremacy. But hope, stubborn and resilient, prevailed. They entered the gorge, the reindeer squeezing through. Anya was the last, turning to face the wolves. They growled, frustrated, unable to pass. She had succeeded. The hidden valley was within reach, the life of her village, Boris's legacy, the promise of a new dawn. All of it was safe, for now. Anya remained at the mouth of the gorge, Boris's spear raised, her fragile body a barrier against the 5 snarling wolves. Yellow eyes gleamed in the gloom, full of hunger. The cold cut her skin, adrenaline pulsed. The reindeer, squeezed into the narrow corridor, trembled. Anya had bought time, but the battle was far from over. The wolves, frustrated, circled, seeking openings. Their howls, close, reminded her of the constant threat. With an exhausted sigh, Anya turned, guiding the reindeer deeper. The passage narrowed, rock and ice walls almost touching. Darkness deepened, the wind created snow whirlwinds. Each step was a test. The reindeer advanced with difficulty, antlers scraping, bodies contorting. Anya went ahead, Boris's spear probing the ground, seeking safety on the treacherous ice. The memory of her husband, a wise guide, was a beacon, teaching her never to underestimate the mountain. The gorge, which promised refuge, became a trap. The rocky ground gave way to translucent ice. Anya felt a shiver. Below the thin layer, dark, freezing water of an underground river whispered. She tested the ice with the spear. A cracking sound echoed. Anya's heart pounded. The ice was too thin for the herd. The hidden valley was beyond, but the path was blocked by a danger greater than the wolves. Anya's eyes widened. This was the turning point, the final ordeal. She had planned for wolves and storm, but not for the ice that threatened to give way. Fear, icy and paralyzing, tried to overcome her. But the image of the village's faces, the hopeful eyes of the children, emerged. Ancestral wisdom whispered, "The mountain will always challenge you, but resilience lies in your heart." Anya took a deep breath. She could not retreat, could not give up. She looked at the reindeer, their large, dark eyes fixed on her. Their trust was a burden and a strength. Anya needed to find another path. She turned, scanning the ice and rock walls. There was a small ledge, almost invisible in the gloom, extending precariously along the right wall. Narrow, covered in snow and ice, perhaps it could serve as a bridge. A dangerous path, but perhaps the only one. With Boris's spear held firmly in her hands, Anya tested the ledge, leaning against the icy walls. Each movement was slow, calculated, her aged body demanding monumental effort. The reindeer watched, quiet, sensing the gravity. She made a gentle gesture to the lead reindeer, indicating the way. The animal hesitated, but the trust in Anya outweighed the fear. With a careful step, the reindeer placed a hoof on the ledge, testing the ground. The ice cracked, but held. One by one, the reindeer followed, hooves scraping on the rock, bodies squeezing through. Anya stayed at the rear, pushing the younger animals. The grief for Boris, once pain, was now the force that propelled her. She felt his presence, ancestral wisdom guiding her. The hidden valley was closer, but the path to hope was made of ice and courage. Anya felt the ice crack under the lead reindeer's hooves as it advanced along the narrow ledge. The sound, amplified by the silence of the gorge, was a whisper of danger, reminding her of the fragility of her path. She held Boris's spear with both hands, the cold, worn wood, an extension of her will. Every muscle in her aged body protested, but she ignored the pain, focused on guiding the animals. Her eyes, once tearful with grief, were beacons of concentration, scanning the ice ahead, seeking the safest point. The reindeer, one by one, followed the leader, their hooves scraping on the rock, seeking purchase. Fear was palpable, but the trust in Anya was greater. They squeezed against the ice wall, lean bodies forming a precarious line, each step an act of faith. The wind, previously furious, had lessened in the gorge, but still raised curtains of fine snow that blinded and bit at her skin. Anya felt the scent of the wolves, a faint trail, reminding her that danger lurked just behind, waiting for a mistake. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air burning her lungs. The memory of Boris, of his strong hands teaching her to hunt, to read nature's signs, was a silent force that propelled her. He always said that the mountain was a cruel but fair master, and that wisdom lay in dancing with its challenges. Now she danced, a slow and dangerous ballet on the ice, with the village's life as the stake. The image of the children's faces, of the elders waiting, was a balm for her exhaustion, an inexhaustible source of courage. She felt her heart pounding, not only from the effort, but from the immense responsibility. It was not just a herd, but the hope of her people, the legacy of generations who survived harsh winters. The connection with the reindeer was deep, almost mystical. They were more than animals. They were an extension of her family, the promise of a future. She gently touched the flank of a reindeer, feeling its warmth, a precious life she had sworn to protect. Finally, the ledge began to widen, becoming a more stable path, still covered by slippery ice and snow. Anya felt a faint relief, a knot unraveling in her stomach. They had overcome the danger of the thin ice, and the reindeer, feeling the firmer ground beneath their hooves, seemed to breathe with a subtle relief, although the tension of the journey still hung in the icy air. The gorge, however, continued, its sheer walls closing and opening at points, a natural labyrinth that tested Anya's patience and her deep knowledge of the terrain. The wolves' howls, which had been silent for a while as she concentrated on the crossing, echoed again, closer now, coming from the entrance of the gorge. They had not given up. Hunger was a predator as relentless as the biting cold. Anya knew she needed to quicken her pace, but with the utmost caution. A false step, even now, could be fatal for her and for the entire herd. The blizzard and the treacherous curves of the gorge swallowed any sight of the predators, but Anya could feel their presence, a hungry shadow lurking. Only the sound, icy and menacing, was a constant presence, a reminder that the battle for survival was not over. Anya raised Boris's spear, a gesture that was both a silent challenge to the elements and a deep prayer to her ancestors. The hidden valley, the promised refuge, was within reach, but the path there still demanded every drop of her inner strength and resilience. She felt the promise of dawn, the faint light that would come to dispel the darkness and cold, warming her icy heart with new hope. With a sigh of determination that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, she guided the reindeer to the next curve, one step at a time, hope pulsing strong in her veins, an unwavering beacon in the white and merciless darkness of Yakutia. Anya guided the reindeer to the next curve, one step at a time, hope pulsing strong in her veins, an unwavering beacon in the merciless darkness of Yakutia. The gorge narrowed again, the rock and ice walls almost touching, forcing the reindeer to follow in single file. The air grew heavier, laden with the damp scent of ice and the wild odor of the wolves, which intensified with every meter. Anya knew they were close, just a few meters from the entrance of the gorge, awaiting an opening. She gripped Boris's spear, feeling the familiar weight, a comfort amidst the rising tension. Her eyes, previously fixed on the ledge, now scanned the walls, seeking any sign or crevice for a new challenge or escape route. The wind, once her ally, now played with sounds, bringing howls from all directions, confusing her senses and increasing the feeling of being besieged. An older reindeer, with antlers worn by years of wildlife, stumbled, letting out a low moan that was lost in the wind's howl. Anya turned quickly, reaching out to touch its flank, a gesture of affection and encouragement. "Courage, my old friend," she whispered, her voice hoarse from cold and exhaustion. "We cannot stop now." The reindeer looked at her with wise eyes, and with renewed effort regained its footing, the trust in Anya a balm for its fear. The connection between her and the animals was deep, forged in endless winters, a silent language of trust and survival. Anya felt exhaustion seep into her bones, every muscle protesting, but the image of her village's faces, the hungry eyes that depended on her, was a balm, an inexhaustible source of strength that propelled her. The grief for Boris, which once consumed her, was now a flame that propelled her, a silent promise that his legacy would live through her in every step, in every decision. The gorge made a sharp bend, revealing a small opening, a glimpse of the night sky, less dense with snow. It was the exit, the portal to the hidden valley. A wave of relief swept over Anya, but it was short-lived, for the wolves' howls became a deafening chorus. Coming from that opening, they had anticipated her exit, blocking the path with cunning Anya hadn't expected. She stopped abruptly, raising the spear, her fragile body a barrier between the herd and the imminent threat. The wolves, though invisible in the darkness and snow, were a palpable presence, their low, menacing growls. She could feel the heat of their bodies, the scent of their hunger, an icy presence that squeezed her heart. There was no way to fight against so many, nor to pass directly through them without sacrificing the herd. Ancestral wisdom, which Boris had taught her, spoke of the importance of knowing the enemy, of using the terrain to one's advantage, transforming disadvantage into opportunity. Anya scanned the gorge walls, desperately seeking an alternative. There was a small crevice, almost imperceptible, on the left side, covered by snow. It was narrow, dangerous, and seemed to lead nowhere, a hole in the rock. But it was a chance to disorient the wolves, to buy time, to find a new path. With a sharp cry coming from the depths of her soul, Anya struck the spear against the ice, a piercing sound that echoed, startling the reindeer and, for an instant, silencing the wolves, who hesitated, surprised by the widow's ferocity. She used the moment to push the younger reindeer towards the crevice, indicating the way with firm gestures. The reindeer hesitated, fear in their eyes, but the urgency in Anya's voice propelled them. They squeezed through the crevice, their bodies brushing against the ice and rock walls, antlers scraping, but advancing. Anya was the last, turning to face the main opening. The wolves, furious at the distraction and escape, were now visible, their dark silhouettes against the snow, yellow eyes gleaming with renewed hunger. They growled, advancing, but the crevice was too narrow. Anya had succeeded once again, using cunning and courage. The path to the hidden valley was still uncertain, but she had bought more time, another chance for the village. She felt exhaustion reach a new level, but the determination in her eyes was unwavering. With a sigh, she squeezed through the crevice, following the reindeer into the unknown, trusting in ancestral wisdom and the silent, deep strength of her love for Boris. The journey continued, one step at a time, towards the promise of dawn, where life, despite everything, would find its way, guided by unwavering resilience. Anya squeezed through the crevice, her aged body brushing against the ice and rock walls. The air there, dense and humid, carried the metallic scent of mineral. The outer light disappeared, swallowed by the narrowness, plunging them into gloom. Boris's spear probed the way, her guide. The reindeer, one by one, followed her with fear, their hooves echoing dully. The crevice opened into a natural tunnel, winding and inclined. The ground, uneven and covered with ice and rocks, made each step an ordeal. The cold, there was a penetrating dampness that clung to her bones, more insidious than the wind. Anya felt a shiver of uncertainty. This path was unknown, a gamble. The wolves' howls, distant, still reminded her of the threat. They were trapped, but perhaps safe. Exhaustion was a thick fog, her muscles burning in endless effort. She felt the weight of every winter, every loss. But the faces of the village, the hungry eyes of the children, were her beacon. Boris. She felt his presence, the silent strength, ancestral wisdom whispering, "Never give up, Anya. The mountain always reveals a path." Advancing cautiously, Anya noticed the tunnel narrow again, forcing them to bend. She touched the walls with her free hand, feeling the cold, damp rock. Suddenly, Boris's spear struck something hollow. A muffled, distinct sound. Anya stopped, her heart pounding. She probed with the spear, discovering a small opening in the wall, almost imperceptible. It was dark, narrower, but from it came a breath of less icy air, an indication of an exit. The reindeer, sensing her hesitation, stopped, their eyes fixed on her. Their trust was a precious burden. Anya knew she could not lead them through there. It was too narrow and dangerous for the herd, but perhaps it was an escape route if the wolves reached her. No, she would not think of that. Her destiny was intertwined with theirs. She turned, making gentle gestures to the reindeer, indicating they should continue. The main tunnel, though difficult, was the only option for the herd. With a sigh, Anya felt the pain in her back, but ignored it. She needed to keep hope alive, not just for the animals, but for herself. With each step, she recited ancient prayers, protection chants from her grandmother. The connection with the land and her ancestors was her armor. The tunnel widened a little, and a faint, almost imperceptible light appeared ahead. It was a promise, a glimpse of the outside, but still distant. Anya quickened her pace, hope renewed. The scent of the wolves had diminished. Perhaps the wind in the tunnel carried it away. With each curve, the light grew stronger, revealing rock walls covered by glittering ice crystals. The reindeer, sensing the change, also quickened, their bodies showing more vigor. Anya felt a wave of relief, but did not relax her guard. Yakutia was a cruel mistress, and safety always temporary. The hidden valley was closer, but the path there was a tapestry of dangers. She gripped Boris's spear, the warmth of her hand on the wood, a reminder that strength came from the heart. The journey continued, one step at a time, guided by the courage of a woman and the promise of a new dawn. The faint light Anya had spotted at the end of the tunnel grew, transforming into a silvery glow that outlined the exit. The air, previously dense and humid, began to clear, bringing with it the fresh scent of newly fallen snow and a cleaner breath of wind which kissed her cold-marked face. The reindeer, sensing the proximity of freedom, quickened their pace, their hooves beating with a more hopeful rhythm on the rocky ground. Anya felt a deep relief, a warmth that spread through her chest, but did not relax her guard. Yakutia was treacherous, a cruel mistress who taught that safety was always a momentary illusion, a gift to be received with caution. With Boris's spear raised, she emerged from the tunnel, her eyes slowly adjusting to the dazzling clarity of the valley. Before her, a vast valley stretched, covered by an untouched mantle of shimmering snow, which looked like a sea of diamonds under the grey sky. Majestic peaks, crowned with ice, rose around, losing themselves in the low clouds, like silent guardians. The wind, though still cold, seemed milder here, and the snow, softer and less treacherous, offered a safer footing. It was the hidden valley, the refuge she had sought with such determination and sacrifice. The reindeer, with a collective moan of exhaustion and gratitude, spread out a little, some beginning to sniff the snow in search of the moss that promised nourishment. Anya watched them, a tired but genuine smile appearing on her cracked and dry lips. They had made it. The danger of the thin ice, the treacherous crevice, the wolves that pursued them relentlessly. Everything seemed for a moment to have been left behind, a distant memory. She felt the familiar weight of Boris's spear in her hands, no longer as a heavy burden, but as a tangible symbol of her strength and the living memory of her husband. A solitary tear ran down her cheek, chilled by the wind, but warmed by the certainty that Boris would be proud of her resilience. However, the peace was brief, like a snowflake melting in the palm of her hand. A solitary howl, long and drawn out, tore through the valley's silence, coming from a distant ridge. It was not a hunting howl, but a call, a warning that chilled Anya's blood. She turned abruptly, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The 5 wolves that pursued them, the most cunning and relentless of the pack, had found an alternative route, climbing the steep slopes of the gorge, and now stood there, watching them from above, dark silhouettes against the white. Their yellow eyes gleamed like embers in the gloom, and their low growls echoed, promising a renewed pursuit, a final challenge. Anya felt despair try to overcome her again, an icy wave that threatened to paralyze her already exhausted limbs. Exhaustion was overwhelming, and the idea of another battle, after all they had endured, was almost unbearable. But she looked at the reindeer, at the calves that nestled near their mothers, at the wise eyes of the lead reindeer, which watched her with unwavering trust, a mirror of her own hope. She could not give up. The life of her village, Boris's legacy, the promise of a new dawn, everything depended on her indomitable courage. Ancestral wisdom whispered in her mind, the voice of her grandmother, of Boris, clear as ice. The mountain will always challenge you, but resilience lies in your heart. Use what the land offers you, Anya. It is your ally. Anya scanned the valley with her eyes, desperately seeking a solution, a vantage point. The valley was vast, but there was a higher area, a rocky plateau in the center, which offered a wide view and more defensible terrain. It was a risk, yes, but perhaps the only chance to face the wolves on her own terms, to transform disadvantage into opportunity. With a hoarse cry coming from the depths of her soul, Anya began to guide the reindeer to the plateau. The animals, sensing the urgency in her voice and in her firm gestures, began to move, their hooves sinking into the soft snow, raising small white clouds. The wolves, seeing her strategic movement, descended from the ridge, gaining speed, their howls becoming more aggressive, a hungry chorus that echoed through the mountains. The race had begun again, a dance of life and death in the frozen vastness. Anya, despite the throbbing pain in every muscle, ran ahead. Boris's spear pointed towards the horizon, her fragile body propelled by a force that seemed to come from elsewhere, from her ancestors, from unconditional love for her people. She felt the wind cut her wrinkled face, the icy air burning her lungs with each breath, but determination was a fire that warmed her from within, stronger than the cold. With each step, she recited the ancient prayers, her grandmother's protection chants, weaving an invisible barrier of hope and courage around the herd, a silent promise that she would not yield. The plateau was closer, but so were the wolves. The distance dangerously rapidly decreased. Anya could hear the panting breath of the animals behind her, the rhythmic sound of their hooves in the snow. She knew she needed to reach the plateau before the wolves reached them on open ground, where they would be vulnerable. The final battle was imminent, and Anya, the widow of YAKUT, was ready to face it, not with despair, but with the resilience forged in endless winters, and grief transformed into an unwavering force. Dawn, with its promise of light and warmth, seemed to be just a breath away. But she knew she had to fight for it. Anya felt the air tear her lungs, her heart pounding. The rocky plateau, her last bastion, seemed to recede. The reindeer, exhausted, moaned, mixing with the wind's howl and the wolves' growl. The 5 predators, tireless, were a fire of hunger. Anya felt the wild breath on her neck, the promise of an end. With a final effort, she reached the plateau. It was a modest elevation, with a steep rock wall, a natural refuge. With urgent gestures, Anya guided the reindeer to protection, forming a defensive semicircle. Frightened calves nestled. Anya positioned herself at the front. Boris's spear raised, her aged but unwavering body a barrier. The wolves arrived, stopping at the base of the plateau. Yellow eyes gleamed with cold intelligence and hunger. They did not attack immediately, studying her. Low growls echoed, a prelude to the hunt. The wind, strong on the plateau, raised curtains of whipping snow, but also obscured the wolves' vision, a small advantage. Boris's wisdom, ancestral tactics flowed. She remembered his words. The mountain has secrets, Anya. Use the wind, the ice, make them fight against themselves. She observed the plateau, the wind, the wolves' formation. There was a narrow and deep crevice, almost invisible under the snow, near the edge. A natural trap. Anya had a risky idea. With a hoarse cry, she struck the spear against the icy ground. Then she ran towards the crevice, not to fall, but to lure the wolves. The predators, surprised, hesitated, and then, with a furious howl, advanced, focused on her. Anya ran with all her might, her feet barely touching the ground. Boris's spear pointed behind her, a challenge. The wolves pursued her, eyes fixed. As they dangerously approached the crevice, Anya, with surprising agility, sharply swerved, rolling in the snow. The wolves, blinded by speed and fury, could not stop. 2 fell into the crevice with howls of pain and surprise, their bodies disappearing. The other 3 stopped, confused, their attack disorganized. Anya stood up, panting, her body aching but with triumph in her eyes. She had divided the pack. The 3 remaining wolves growled, more cautious. She needed to keep them disoriented. With the spear, she stirred the snow, raising a white curtain that, with the wind, created a visual barrier. The wolves, frustrated, howled, not knowing where to attack. Anya took advantage of the chaos. With a powerful cry, she advanced to scare them. The wolves, shaken by loss and confusion, retreated. Anya's strategy was not to kill, but to demoralize, to use intelligence. Sensing the trap, the disadvantage of the terrain, and the unwavering fury of that woman, they began to disperse one by one. Their hunting howls transformed into laments of defeat, fading into the distance. Anya, exhausted, fell to her knees in the snow, Boris's spear still in her hands. The silence was deafening, broken by the reindeer's breathing and her heart. She looked at the herd, intact, safe. The calves were calmer. The led reindeer watched her, its wise eyes expressing gratitude. The battle had been won. Dawn, with its promise of light and warmth, seemed real. The village's life was safe, and Boris's legacy pulsed in her heart. Anya, still on her knees in the soft snow, felt her entire body tremble, no longer from cold or fear, but from overwhelming relief. The silence that followed the wolves' dispersion was a balm to her ears, which had previously echoed howls and growls. Boris's spear, which she still held tightly, now felt lighter, a support instead of a weapon. Her eyes, tearful, scanned the plateau. The reindeer, previously huddled and terrified, began to move, sniffing the snow in search of hidden moss. Their calves, once trembling, now nestled more calmly beside their mothers. The lead reindeer, with its wise eyes, approached Anya, gently nudging its muzzle against the widow's wrinkled hand, a gesture of gratitude that filled Anya's heart with unexpected warmth. With a soft groan, Anya rose, feeling every muscle protest, every bone ache. Exhaustion was a thick fog, but victory was a sun beginning to dissipate it. She pressed Boris's spear against her chest, feeling the cold wood, but also the warm memory of the man who loved her and taught her to survive. "We made it, my love," she whispered, her voice hoarse but laden with deep emotion. A solitary tear ran down her cheek, chilled by the wind, but warmed by the certainty that Boris would be proud. The grief, which for so long had consumed her, now mingled with a new strength, a resilience forged in pain and overcoming. As the sun began to peek from behind the snowy peaks, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and gold, the hidden valley revealed itself in all its untouched beauty. The mantle of snow glittered like millions of diamonds, and the air, though still icy, felt purer, lighter. It was a new dawn, not just for the day, but for Anya and for her village. The reindeer, now calmer, grazed in small groups, and the sound of their hooves in the snow was a melody of peace. Life, despite everything, had found its way. Anya knew that the journey was not yet over. The village awaited her, anxious for news, hungry for hope. The sight of her people's faces, the curious eyes of the children, was a beacon that propelled her. She had kept her promise, not only to Boris, but to the entire community. The ancestral wisdom, which had guided her through darkness and danger, had proven true. The mountain, with its relentless challenges, also offered refuge and taught the strength that resides in the human heart. With a renewed sigh of determination, Anya began to guide the reindeer off the plateau, towards the exit of the valley. With each step, she felt the promise of a future, of a winter that, though harsh, would be overcome. Boris's spear, now in her hand, was a staff, a symbol of her leadership and the continuity of her people. She was no longer just a grieving widow, she was the guardian of life, the weaver of hope. The journey back would be long, but her heart was light, warmed by the certainty that the resilience of a woman, forged in ice and pain, could, indeed, overcome the fury of 1,000 predators, ensuring that the legacy of her people would continue to pulse in the frozen vastness of Yakutia. Anya walked on, Boris's spear in hand, a symbol of her journey. The sun cast stronger rays over the white immensity, revealing a path. The soft snow yielded under her feet, the icy air brought renewal. The reindeer, guided by her calm presence, followed her in silent procession, their hooves breaking the ice. Exhaustion still embraced her, but with the sweetness of victory and the promise of well-deserved rest. Anya's mind, once a whirlwind of fears, settled into deep peace. She thought of Boris, not with the sharp pain of grief, but with immense gratitude for his lessons. The ancestral wisdom he embodied had been the compass in her darkest night. She felt him by her side, a living force, a whisper in the wind that propelled her. The hidden valley lay behind, a memory of overcoming etched in her soul, a testament to her resilience. The return journey was less dangerous but challenging. The treacherous terrain, the relentless cold, tested her aged body. However, the threat of the wolves had dissipated, replaced by the certainty of survival. Anya watched the reindeer, their bodies wounded, but their eyes full of new vitality. The calves, once frightened, now played timidly in the snow, a sign of hope that warmed the widow's heart. When the silhouette of the village appeared on the horizon, a dark smudge against the infinite white, a knot of emotion formed in Anya's throat. There was her people, her family, waiting for her. Anxiety mingled with joy. The sight of the smoking chimneys, the lights in the windows, dispelled any doubt. Life pulsed there, and she had ensured it would continue to pulse. The guard dogs, with joyful barks, alerted the village. Within minutes, figures emerged from the huts, faces marked by the long wait. Upon recognizing Anya and the herd, a unison cry of relief and joy erupted, echoing through the mountains. Children ran into the snow, calling Anya, while the elders, with tears in their eyes, embraced, hope rekindled. Anya felt enveloped by an overwhelming wave of affection and admiration. Wrinkled hands touched her, eyes expressing unspeakable gratitude. The village men, once skeptical, now looked at her with reverent respect. She had done the impossible, saving them from hunger and despair. The majestic lead reindeer entered the village, followed by the herd, a living symbol of the entire community's victory. In the central square by the bonfire, Anya was greeted by Elena the healer and Ivan the elder. Elena embraced her tightly, her tears wetting Anya's shoulder. "You've returned, my sister. You saved them. You are our light." Ivan, with a solemn nod, held Boris's spear with her, a gesture of deep recognition and ancestral honor. "Boris's spirit lives in you, Anya," he said, his voice choked. "You are the guardian of our people, the strength that guides us." Anya looked at the faces of her village, at the children, at the herd. The grief for Boris was still there, a scar, but now coexisted with strength, with the certainty that her love had transformed into salvation. She was no longer just the solitary widow, she was the heroine, the personification of her people's unwavering resilience, a beacon of hope. That night, under a starry sky that seemed to celebrate life, the village gathered. Stories were told, ancient songs chanted, and the bonfire crackled, warming bodies and souls. Anya, sitting among her people, felt a warmth that went far beyond the fire, a warmth of connection, of purpose, of belonging. She had faced the fury of 1,000 wolves, the icy embrace of Yakutia, and emerged victorious. The legacy of her people was safe, and hope, once again, pulsed strong in the frozen vastness. Life would continue, an eternal testament to the unwavering strength of the human spirit, guided by ancestral wisdom and selfless love. The night advanced, and the crackling of the bonfire was the only melody that broke the respectful silence that had settled in the village square. Anya, her face illuminated by the dancing flames, observed the faces of her people. The wrinkles on their foreheads, once marked by worry and despair, now softened into gentle smiles, into looks of admiration and deep gratitude. She felt the warmth of the bonfire on her skin, but an even greater warmth filled her heart, the warmth of connection, of renewed purpose. The grief for Boris, though it would never completely disappear, had found a new place within her, transforming not into an open wound, but into a source of silent strength. The lessons he had taught her, the courage he had always displayed, now lived through her, a legacy she carried with pride and responsibility. Elena, the healer, sat beside her, offering her a steaming herbal tea whose calming properties promised to alleviate the weariness of body and soul. Her eyes, once full of apprehension, now shone with a serene light. "You are not just the guardian of the reindeer, Anya," Elena whispered, her voice soft as moss beneath the snow. "You are the guardian of our faith, of our hope. You have shown us that winter can be long and cruel, but the human spirit is stronger than any blizzard." Anya merely nodded, unable to find words to express the complexity of her feelings. She took the cup, feeling the warmth through the wood, a small comfort amidst the vastness of the world. Ivan the elder approached, his imposing figure casting a long shadow on the snow. He knelt before Anya, a gesture of respect she would never expect. With wrinkled hands, he held hers, his eyes fixed on hers. "The spirit of our ancestors guided you, Anya. You are living proof that the wisdom of generations is not lost, but strengthened in the hands of those who honor it. Your deed will be told for many winters, and your name will be remembered as that of the woman who defied the darkness." Ivan's words, laden with ancestral solemnity, touched Anya deeply. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders, but also the lightness of acceptance, of recognition. The next morning, the sun rose with a clarity that seemed to wash the landscape of all shadow. The valley, once the scene of a desperate battle, now stretched in renewed peace. The reindeer, fed and rested, grazed peacefully, their hooves breaking the thin layer of ice with a soft rhythmic sound. Anya, though exhausted, felt a different energy, an inner stillness she had never before experienced. She walked among the animals, touching their warm flanks, feeling the life that pulsed within each of them. They were more than a herd. They were the essence of her village, the promise of continuity. The days that followed brought a new routine, a new dynamic for the village. Anya was no longer seen merely as Boris's widow, but as the wise one, the courageous one, the one who had defied the impossible. The children followed her with curious eyes full of admiration, asking her to tell again the story of the wolves and the mountain crevice. She, with her soft, hoarse voice, narrated the events, not with pride, but with the humility of one who knows she was merely an instrument of a greater force. Each word was a thread that wove the tapestry of collective memory, reinforcing the values of resilience and altruism that kept her community united. Boris's spear, once a hunting weapon, became a sacred artifact, hung above the entrance to her hut, a silent reminder of courage and sacrifice. Anya, in turn, found a new purpose. She began to teach the village children the survival tactics Boris had taught her, her grandmother's protection songs, to read the signs of snow and wind. Her eyes, once shadowed by grief, now shone with the light of shared knowledge, of hope planted in new generations. She was not just living, she was building a future, ensuring that the legacy of her people, forged in ice and pain, would continue to pulse in the frozen vastness of Yakutia, eternal and unwavering. The winter was still long, but the village knew that with Anya, light would always find a way.